What's going on, everyone? This is Cadman Cycling. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Innsbruck. This is the Innsbruck Flat reverse race. 2 laps around this circuit for a total of 11.1 miles. Innsbruck is a very flat course apart from one short climb, and it's a pretty steep climb, lasts about 45 seconds, I would say. And it has a name, so anytime you get a climb with a name, you know it's a tough one. This one's called the Leg Snapper. It's a very flat race, but the race comes down to the 2 segments, since it's 2 laps, the 2 segments up this climb. And that's exactly what we'll see play out here. So this is my 3rd ever race at Innsbruck. The first one was actually my first ever Cat C win. So I'm a Cat C rider within the game of Zwift. That's for riders who average about 2.5 to 3.2 watts per kilogram during the race. So my first ever Cat C win was here at Innsbruck. Actually my first ever race at Innsbruck. So I like the way this map is set up, very flat, but like I said, the splits happen on the climb. It's a straight up climb, but then immediately comes into a descent. So you got to be quick up the climb, but the descent is actually just as important as the climb. You can let some riders hang off in front of you during the climb and actually catch them pretty easily on the descent. But likewise, if you don't work hard down the descent, you can also get dropped and kind of lose the riders for the rest of the race. So we're here just in the first mile. It's a big group today. We got 59 riders, but that actually includes all different categories. So if you look on the right-hand side, you can see some A riders 17, 16 seconds ahead. So we kind of started in different pens. So that's why everyone here is a Cat C rider, even though we're all on the same course right now. We're not all in the same group. So the majority of this race, everyone in the pack I'm in will be a Cat C rider. But when we see the total number of riders at 59, that does include all categories. So there might be about 15 to 20 Cat C riders. So here we are. I showed the first half mile, but immediately jumped ahead to 2.7 miles into the race, just because I know exactly what you want to see, especially the viewers that have been here before. It's the pain. It's this leg snapper. So we're getting close to it. We have this cobbled section. There's a little bit of this false flat, kind of an uphill of 1-2% grade, and then it flattens out ahead of time, and then we'll hit the climb. This is really just such a beautiful map. Obviously never been to Innsbruck. I'm here in the United States, but it's definitely on the bucket list. Kind of up in the mountains, just looks like such a beautiful course. But the way this course works for the most part is people kind of hold back on the flat. Compare it to Crit City, races around New York City. Any other map, it just seems like people are slower on the flat part because they know what this climb entails. So here we are, up to 5% grade, quick climb. The way I kind of take this is I usually jump out of the saddle pretty early on in this climb. Kind of lower the RPMs out of the saddle, put down some effort, and then I'll sit down when I'm about a third of the way up the climb, do the middle part seated, and then once I get the legs start to feel it while I'm seated, then I'll jump back out of the saddle for the end of the climb, and then I'll kind of stay out of the saddle even at the start of the descent, just because, like I said before, that descent is just as important, if not more important, than the climb itself. So I'm actually feeling pretty good here. Heart rate's up, but that's because we're going hard, obviously. 300, 400 watts up this climb. This is still the front group of C's. So there's just these 2 guys in front of me. I'm pushing it, and I have a large strung out group behind me. So I push it over the top, keep it at 400 watts, and now we're on the downhill. So I'm out of a group I'm on my own here. There's this group of 3 guys in front of me. So I continue pushing it. I'm still at 250 watts, trying to catch this group because I don't want to get dropped. We're only 3.6 miles into this race. It's a short race, but I know this is exactly where a split can happen. So I put in enough effort to the point I know I can catch these 2 in front of me, but once I know I'm going to catch them, I immediately lay off. There's no use in putting in any extra watts that aren't needed. So I lay off pretty quickly, and just like that, we kind of group up. So I'm looking at that top right map. It looks like we have this group of 5 here. Again, this is the front C group. And there's kind of a string of a few groups behind us. We've built some of a gap. If I look on the right-hand screen, it looks like there's some riders 8 seconds behind, 7 seconds, 12 seconds. So we've built this gap on the downhill, and that really isn't all just part of that leg snapper climb. That's also building the gap on the downhill and continuing to push it. So we're nearing the end of the first lap. That leg snapper is kind of actually at the end of the lap. We might have a couple miles left here, but very flat. Like I said, this course is very flat besides that leg snapper. And really no one in this group is working. So I'm at 216 watts and I'm on the front. As I kind of head to the back of this group, we'll see I can bring the watts down below 200 and still stick with this group. So this was kind of surprising, and I think this is one of the keys of this race is when I compare it to the other 2 races I've done at Innsbruck. This one was actually a pretty slow pace for the majority of the race, and it was kind of strange. I was like leading into that first climb up the leg snapper, I actually felt extremely good. And I don't think it was because it was just a good day on the bike. I think it was because the pace was actually pretty slow. Whether that's just because it was a smaller race. There were 60 riders across categories, but it's not always even across categories. So I think the C group may have had, maybe 20 people in it. It could have actually been a few more, maybe up to 25, because C is generally one of the larger groups between A, B, C, and D. But here I am still at 160 watts, just staying with this front group. And we had this large lead on the group in front after the descent. And all of a sudden, they've kind of caught us immediately. Like just a lap later, here they are, much higher speed. A few of them are starting to pass, so I immediately pick up the watts. I hit 300 watts, back down to 250, 230, kind of closer to FTP. But it's like all that effort up the leg snapper and then on the descent to kind of narrow that group down to just 5 or 6 riders was all for naught, because that large group behind us was able to catch us pretty easily, and that was just because the power was low. I guess I didn't do my part to push the power on the front. My strategy is usually kind of just sit in the back of the pack and try to hold on for dear life, hoping I can make it to the finish. But because I was feeling kind of better after that first, like the start of the race and then after the leg snapper, I probably should have done more to actually push the pace and seen if we could stay away up until the next leg snapper. But I'll take that as a lesson learned. There's still a lot of race left here. We've still made a split. So this is the front group of C's. It's a little bit bigger now that a few more have caught us. But we did drop some on that first leg snapper. And we're coming here into the end of the first lap. And really this is where people again kind of lay low. Because of the leg snapper, people really don't push that hard on the rest of this race. I think that makes it a much easier race. And I am feeling pretty good. My heart rate's around 180, but whenever it gets to the 170s, that really means I have time to recover. Generally, when I'm around Crit City in the short races, I'll be up in the high 180s, and that's when I know I'm really pushing it. But whenever I'm closer to the 170s, I'm actually feeling pretty good. So we have this large group coming to the end of the first lap. Again, I pushed it for that front group of 5, the group behind us caught us, but I'm still feeling pretty good. Again, my watts are extremely low. In anything in the 100s is pretty sustainable. That there was one rider who kind of made a run there, is now a few seconds in front of us, but knowing we have a good 10, 12, maybe even 15 people in this pack, we'll let him get away and kind of struggle out there on his own, knowing that with 5 miles left, there's plenty of time to catch him. If he was an A rider, of course, we should be scared. He could probably stay away on his own, but knowing that he's a C rider, generally it's very tough in Zwift to kind of jump out on your own and stay away for 5 miles. So we'll go ahead and skip forward. Again, we're nearing the second leg snapper. We're with the same group. So again, this is still the front group of C's. I think that rider out in front did stay away for a little bit. At this point, I don't think we've caught him yet, because again, our watts were pretty low. This was a slow pace. You can see him actually a few seconds ahead. Again, he's not away. We'll eventually catch him. He's kind of just really hurting himself, putting out watts that are unnecessary. But here we go, second time up the leg snapper. And this is where the race turns. This race was extremely slow until this point. I think a lot of people just brought so much energy into this leg snapper that immediately it's like just a light switch flicked here and the race is on. So it's extremely strung out. I'm kind of sitting here in the middle of the pack. I know that this ride up the climb is just as important as the downhill, so I'm sitting around 400 watts, kind of out of the saddle here. A few riders kind of kick out in front, but learning from last time, that front group really didn't stay away, so I'm not pushing it as much as maybe I should have been. Again, we're only 2 miles away from the finish, so this is really the key part. Very strung out. My heart rate's up at 193. I try to push it over the climb. Again, this is the front group, so I continue pushing. 207, 210 watts. Here we go on the downhill. Heart rate's at 191, and I kind of killed the watts there for a second. Realize I don't want to get dropped. It's very strung out on this downhill, so I'm sitting somewhere in the middle of the group, maybe mid to back. And there's these two riders in front of me, but that front group again is ahead, and that's not an issue. We've seen it the previous lap, and also I've seen it multiple times at Innsbruck, that front group really can't stay ahead. Generally in Innsbruck, kind of on this downhill, it oftentimes comes together. But those two riders behind me weren't really working, so I kind of pushed past them. Again, I'm still working really hard. My heart rate's up there, and I'm starting to feel discouraged. This group in front of us now has a 3-second lead, and with only a mile and a half left, it's very different than the first lap. The first lap, we kind of got the lead. I was in the front group at that time. We got the lead, but then knowing that there was still another leg snapper and quite a few miles ahead of us, we really laid off the pedals and we're kind of sitting below 200 watts when we were in the group. That's very different this time around. I think this front group, knowing there's just a mile and a half left, really starts to push it. And all of a sudden I find myself 5 seconds back with just me and these two other riders, and we're kind of in no man's land. We're pushing hard. I'm at 190 beats per minute, which is still very high. I'm definitely feeling it. I'm at 300 watts now, toning it down. And it's kind of tough because this group in front of us, now 7 seconds ahead, they're building this lead. And with only a mile left, they're not sitting down. I'm sure in that group in front of us, they're putting in more watts than we are back here. So it was kind of an interesting race. And this was something I hadn't seen at Innsbruck before, is that front group kind of pushes it and just stays away. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch back up. So I just skipped ahead here to 0.3 miles. Even the two other riders ahead of me kind of sprinted off and I wasn't able to stay with them. 0.2 miles left. There's this large group behind me that now is 4 seconds behind. So kind of during the last half mile of this race, I was kind of watching that right-hand side of the screen. Not large group, just a couple riders, but making sure that I was just sprinting and putting in enough watts to keep them away, because I am on my own with no benefit of the draft. And luckily I was able to do it. So I'm sprinting here at the end, just me on my own, but making sure the group behind me doesn't pass me. And that's it. I finished in 5th place. Definitely a different kind of Innsbruck race. I enjoy all of the variety, though, that Zwift has to offer, from Crit City to now Innsbruck. I enjoy the short rides, but also I've done a few longer races, and really just I feel like every time I race, I learn something new and gain experience. So I didn't win this one. I didn't get the podium, but I definitely learned more about this Innsbruck race. So I really hope you're enjoying this content. I enjoy racing on Zwift. I enjoy kind of doing these race breakdowns because they help me learn as a rider, always trying to become better and learn from my mistakes. So thanks everyone for watching. This is Cadman Cycling, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.